Hello guys, in this video we shall be looking at the various formulas in physics and the topic they came from. Alright, so let's begin with circular motion. Circular motion. The first formula here we're going to talk about is centripetal acceleration. Centripetal acceleration. A is given by v squared over r, where your v is your velocity or linear speed and r is the radius of the circular part. The second formula we're going to look at is the centripetal force, giving us Ft. The formula is mv squared over r, where m is the mass of the object, v is the velocity, and r is the radius of the object. The third formula here we're going to look at is angular velocity. Angular velocity is equal to the angle turned through divided by the elapsed time. The angle turned through divided by the elapsed time. Okay? The fourth formula we'll talk about here is the relationship between the linear speed and the angular velocity. Okay, the relationship between them is v equal to angular velocity times your radius, or it can also be written as the angular velocity times your amplitude. Okay, this is the relationship between your linear speed and the angular velocity. Again, we have another formula, which is angular acceleration. Angular acceleration is given by linear acceleration divided by the radius of the circular part. The radius of the circular part. Also, from circular motion, you can also have that your linear acceleration A can be calculated using the formula angular velocity squared times the radius of the circular part. So with this formula, you can solve any problem involving circular motion. Next, let's look at simple harmonic motion and the related formulas to it. Now, under simple harmonic motion, we have the following formulas. First of all, let's look at the formula to calculate the period of oscillation. The period of oscillation, T, can be calculated using the formula time taken divided by the number of cycles, or it can also be called vibrations, or oscillation. Okay, or oscillations. So it can also be given as T over N. Okay, this formula can be used to calculate the period of oscillation of a simple harmonic motion. Also, the period T is related to the frequency with the formula 1 over F. So, when the frequency is given, getting the period is easier using this formula. Alright, the period is also calculated using formula T equal to 2 pi divided by your angular velocity. This formula can also be used when the angular velocity is given and you're told to get the period. Okay, and the unit for period is seconds. The unit for period is seconds. Okay, now quickly let's check the formula for frequency. Now, frequency of a simple harmonic motion F can be calculated using the formula number of cycles or vibrations or oscillation divided by time taken, okay, written as n over t. That formula can be used to calculate the frequency when the number of oscillation is given and the time. And the unit for frequency is hertz. The unit for frequency is hertz. The frequency is also related to our period with the formula f equal to 1 over the period. So when the period is given and you are told to get a frequency, this formula can be used. Now frequency also have a formula which is angular velocity divided by 2 pi. So when the angular velocity is given and you're told to get a frequency, this formula here applies. All right. Also, your angular velocity from here can also be calculated using the formula. Angular velocity is equal to 2 pi frequency. So you can also get your angular velocity using this formula. Quickly, let's look at the formulas involving simple pendulum. Okay, you will need these formulas a lot. Now, the period of a simple pendulum is given by t is equal to 2 pi square root of L over G, where L is the length of the string and G is acceleration due to gravity. Okay, now when two simple pendulum are being experimented periodically or simultaneously, the period can be calculated using the formula T1 over T2 equal to the square root of L1 over L2. This formula is used when two simple pendulum is being carried out at the same time. You may be asked to get the period of the first pendulum, while the period will be given for the second pendulum. The length of the two pendulum will be given. So you can look for any of these parameters if the rest are given. So remember, two simple pendulum can take this formula. Also, period can also be calculated using t equal to 2 pi root m over k. Now, this formula will be used when the spring constant or force constant is given. Your k here is your spring constant. Whenever a question says calculate the period and the spring constant is given, you can apply this formula to solve it. Okay, now next let's look at more formulas. All right, next let's look at the equations of uniformly accelerated motion. Now, under the equations of motion, there are four basic formulas we need to know. Okay, now the first equation of motion is given by v equal to u plus at, where our v is the final velocity and u is the initial velocity, a is the linear acceleration, and time is t. All right, the second equation of motion is s equal to u plus v multiplied by t divided by 2. Okay, this formula is majorly used when acceleration is not given. All right, the third equation of motion is s equal to ut plus half at squared. Okay, so this is the third equation of motion, while the fourth equation of motion is given by v squared equal to u squared plus 2as. Okay, these are the basic four equations of motion that can be used to solve any problem involving linear acceleration. All right, now let's look at this equation when the object is under gravity. All right. How will these equations be when the object is either going to a height or falling from a height? But before we look into that, take note that whenever an object is starting from a rest, whenever an object is starting from a rest, our initial velocity is always zero. Okay, so if the question says an object starts from rest, just note that your initial velocity is zero. And when the question says an object is brought to rest, so whenever an object is brought to rest, our final velocity is zero. Take note of these two statements. Okay, now let's look at the equations of motion under gravity. Now let's assume that an object is being thrown to a height. Okay, now whenever an object is thrown to a height, acceleration will be given by negative g. Okay, since gravity is acting downward, acceleration will be acting opposite, so our acceleration will be given by negative g. Also, at the maximum height, our final velocity is always equal to zero. So whenever an object is thrown to a height, your final velocity is zero. Whenever an object is released from a height for coming down, your initial velocity is zero and your acceleration is positive g. Okay, so therefore the equations of motion can be given as, the first equation will be v equal to u plus or minus gt. Okay, now your acceleration is g and your time is t. Well, we shall be solving with positive when the object is falling from a height, but when the object is thrown to a height, we're going to solve with the negative sign. Okay, the next equation of motion will be h equal to ut plus or minus 1 over 2 gt squared. Positive will be used when the object is falling from a height, and negative will be used when the object is thrown to a height. The next equation of motion will be v squared equal to u squared plus or minus 2gh. Alright, so when the object is going upward, we use a negative sign. When the object is falling down, we use a positive signs. So these are the basic equations of motion you need to know before your exams. Quickly, let's look at the formulas for speed, velocity, and acceleration. Now, our speed, also called average velocity, is given as distance divided by time. Okay, s over t. Okay, the unit is meter per second. Okay, next is velocity. Velocity v, the formula is displacement divided by time. Okay, which is given as this. The unit is also meter per second. Next, the formula for acceleration. Acceleration is calculated using velocity divided by time. Okay, acceleration can also be calculated using final velocity minus initial velocity divided by time. All right, so any of these formulas can be used when looking for acceleration. Okay, so this can also be written as a equal to v minus u divided by time. So any of these formulas can be used to calculate your speed, velocity, and acceleration. Now, how about if a question is from projectile motion? Now, I'll give you the basic formulas we need under projectile motion. First is the range. Now, when the question says to the horizontal, when the angle is projected horizontally, the formula will be given as u square sine 2 theta divided by g. This formula is used when the object is projected horizontally. But if the question says to the vertical, when the object is projected vertically upward, the formula becomes r equals to u square cos 2 theta over g. So horizontal projection, vertical projection. Also, the maximum height can be calculated using the formula u square sine squared theta over 2g. This is for horizontal projection. For the vertical, we have u square cos squared theta over 2g, horizontal and vertical. Next, let's look at the formula for the time of flight. Time of flight. Time of flight t can be calculated using the formula 2u sine theta over g. Okay, 2u sine theta over g. All right, for the horizontal, while for the vertical, t is equal to 2u cos theta over g. So these are the basic formulas you need when we are talking about projectile motion. Quickly, let's look at the formula for momentum and impulse. Now, momentum is calculated using mass times velocity. Okay, so P is equal to mv. This is the formula to calculate the momentum of a body. While the impulse I is given by force times time. Okay, the unit for momentum is kilogram meter per second. The unit for impulse is Newton seconds. Okay, these are the formulas you need for momentum and impulse. Now let's check the formula for force from the second equation of motion. From the second law of motion, we can say F is equal to mv minus mu over t. It can also be written as m bracket v minus u over t. So you can calculate the force using the product of mass and velocity divided by the time. Also recall that from the equation of motion, acceleration is equal to v minus u over t. So therefore, we can say that your force from here can also be calculated using the what product of mass and acceleration. So you can also calculate your force with mass times acceleration. In our next video, we shall be doing exercises and class activities using all these formulas. So have a great day and take care.